Last game in the Metacritic roundup here is the Callisto Protocol, my most anticipated of the year. On PS5, it has a 74, Xbox Series X, a 72, and PC an 80. I've been playing, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this game. I've put like 5 or 6 hours into it, man. It came out on Friday, and I played it deep into the night, woke up next day, did some life stuff, and then sat down for another, 3 hours or so with it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like torn about this thing, man.
Okay.
Yeah, because so it came out on that Friday, right? And I woke up and like the review embargo lifted at like 2 a.m. that morning. So like there were all these reviews to read. So I read them all, or a good sample of them. And a lot of them were like, I don't know. It's, I think someone called this type of game a playful of teeth, a mouthful of plate. Because when you ask about like, is it good or not, you go like, oh, maybe. Right, yeah. With basically people just saying like, there's no real story to speak of, and the combat is really clunky. Mm-hmm. It looks really nice, but there's just not a whole lot to it, which I can say is certainly the case, having played a little bit of it. But what do these Metacritic scores say to you here?
So the IGN score says, very shortly, the review blurb says, the Callisto Protocol is satisfyingly gory, spiritual successful to the Dead Space series, but it's ultimately more of a striking modern mimic than a scary new mutation. Look at that little clever wordplay right there. Are there mimics in this game? Wait, that's not. That's a different game. That's Prey.
That's Prey.
That's Prey.
There's little like tiny little guys who jump on you, and they're annoying as fuck.
It's
cute. Terrible.
Are they adorable?
It's terrible.
Do they look friendly?
No.
Would you pet one?
No.
If you saw one, would you pet it? Okay.
They're terrible. This game thinks that that like there's nothing scarier than when you open like a locker and then a tiny little zombie guy, like hand-sized face hugger, basically jumps on you and just like you just pay a little tax of your health.
Okay.
Stupid.
So,
and it does that all the time. What's that?
The Jimquisition gives it this review, a 30. It says, the Callisto Protocol isn't scary. It isn't fun. It isn't entertaining, fascinating, or mildly enriching. It lays a self-entitled claim to Dead Space's stylistic and mechanical elements, yet wields not a single one with grace. Instead, performing a crude pantomime, it's mechanically unpleasant, bereft of a single original idea, and hostile to its own players. There's literally one jump scare tactic reused at a rate best described as pathological. It's got some damn nerve wanting to be seen as a worthy successor. It can't even rival the weakest of pretenders. So that's powerful. Wordy. Yeah. And do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like it seems like they really don't like it. I'm unsure of how I feel about it, and I think I have to finish it to really be able to make a fully formed opinion. But I definitely see where they're coming from. It is what I would say derivative of Dead Space in a way that is a disappointment.
All right, so let's kind of go in and talk like beat for beat about the Callisto Protocol here and like kind of like what you're liking and what you're not liking. So in terms of gameplay, let's start with the game. Well, maybe story first. What is the story like in this game?
Okay. There's really not much to it. You play as like his name's like Jacob something.
Jacob Whiteman, right?
Yes, 100%. Okay. And he's just like a very generic, like gruff guy. He's like a ship pilot. He's like a freighter essentially. And you and your partner crash land on Callisto, the moon of Jupiter, which by the way is where Dead Space 2 is set. Fun fact. Yeah, because fun fact, the Callisto moon of Jupiter is like one of the only places in our solar system that we have sort of been able to say, yeah, you know what, that potentially could host human life. Should we make some, we would have to make some, adjustments to it and everything like that. But like, it is potentially able to support human life. But you are like a freighter and you're making a shipment to Callisto, and these people like board your ship, and it's really unclear as to why. And then the ship crash lands because they've disarmed it in some way, and you end up getting thrown in prison in the Black Iron prison with one of the people who was on board the ship. Your co-pilot died, and you get like seemingly wrongfully put in prison, and then you wake up in prison like basically on your first day, and there are just zombies running around, and you are just trying to escape. And so you meet up with a guy who's trying to help you escape, and that has been the story so far. And like I said, I'm in like 6 hours into this thing.
Okay, so that seems... is any of that done in like cool action set pieces, or is it like just kind of told to you and you wake up?
I mean, yeah, like you. So like the opening scene is fine enough. You know, you're just like learning how to like move around the world in your ship and whatever. And then you get boarded, and it wants to do some of those action set pieces from, you know, Dead Space, but like it is a much slower, more methodical game. So big action set pieces like that would kind of feel out of place for the tone it's going for and for what it's trying to be. It's trying to lean way more into horror than I think Dead Space ever did. But I just don't think it's that successful because Dead Space, you know, this is so subjective, but I don't really find Dead Space to be all that scary. Like, it's scary initially when you like get into it because you don't really know what to expect. But pretty quickly into Dead Space, like, it's sort of shown you all of its cards, and at a certain point you have enough ammo in Dead Space to like not really be worried about like how you're going to get out of a situation should, you know, you get a little too deep into it. Whereas this employs the same tactics of like, it only has a handful of cards, and the handful of cards and the cards are just like, well, what if like a zombie like just jumped out at you? It's like, yeah, that is startling, but is it scary? Not really. There's been one scene that I've found to be actually quite tense, and then the rest of it has been pretty standard, just like walking around, something jumps out at you, you fight it, and then you move on, if that makes sense.
And then so the gameplay of it, how similar to Dead Space is it?
This is a game that I think if you didn't know who made it, you would be able to say like, wow, they are really trying to take Dead Space, but sort of spin it a little bit. But I think they were sort of unsuccessful. Basically, it has a much heavier emphasis on melee combat over the guns of Dead Space, as you saw in our retrospective of it on our and the bonus show for exclusive for deluxe Patreon producers. The melee combat in Dead Space is like nothing. Like, you have a melee attack, but there's just no reason to do it other than it kind of just push things off of you because it's really weak, and there's just, you're not going to really damage an enemy that way. In this game, it is like very, very heavily focused on melee. And you're like, you do get guns eventually, but the ammo for them is, I don't think it's very scarce. I'm playing on the medium difficulty. But your inventory space is very scarce. So you have to really like, the scarcity is basically, you can be as scarce or as plentiful as you want it to be, but you have to balance like also holding health items and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the melee combat itself, in a word, is just, it's clunky. It's not very fluid. It doesn't feel very good to do. So basically, when you get attacked by an enemy, you are going to be wanting to block, to dodge out of the way of their attacks. And to do that, you hold either the left or right direction on the left stick, and you will sort of like, you know, duck out of the way. And then if they come in for another swing, you tilt the stick to the other side, and then you duck out of the way. And you do that until they are sort of done attacking, and then you counterattack with a hit with either a baton, or you get like a wrench, or like any of your melee weapons. But the problem with that is the left stick is what you use to move. So like, if you were trying to like juke around an enemy, you know what I mean? Like run around them, like, or like reposition. If they're attacking you, you sort of get locked into this like animation that you might not necessarily be ready for. And it just doesn't feel very good. Because also like I said, like you can't really reposition or anything like that because as soon as an enemy attacks you, you get locked into this. If you hit back, if you're trying to like walk away from them, back is to like do a block. So it's not like, it just doesn't feel very fluid because it just like chunks you into this stiff animation stuff. And then on top of that, you get better weapons as the game goes on, but like enemies are really, really tanky. Like shooting them also, like they take a few hits to go down before you can start upgrading your weapons and stuff like that. So it is very challenging because you die in like 2 or 3 or 4 hits, depending on how hard you get hit, and depending on like where you were starting in terms of health. So you go down really fast. The first actual combat encounter that I experienced at like the very beginning of the game took me like, I'm not kidding, 6 tries.
Oh,
because like the dodging, not only is it like you have to hold the stick until their animation is pretty much finished in its entirety. So like if you let go sort of after they've moved their hand past you, even though it looks like they're done with their attack, if you let go of the dodge in that moment, you're going to get hit. So you can't like really you can't outspeed them essentially. Like the tempo of the combat is like pretty much exclusively how it's going to be. It is set by the actual enemies, not like by your ability to like quickly like transition from dodging to hitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just like it's not fluid.
There's no fluidity to it. It feels very, very rigid and stiff. And then on top of that, like it took me, like I said, like 6 tries to beat the first enemy. And I was playing with Elena. She's sitting next to me. And I was like, does it look like I'm doing anything wrong here? You know? And she's like, not really. And I was like, right. Like, this is so weird, man. Because I think like it just feels like a first pass at the idea. And it's like a decent enough idea. But I think in execution, it just doesn't really work all that well. And it just completely falls apart when you have to fight more than one enemy.
So it does sound like you're talking about God of War Ragnarok.
But so here's the deal, man. Like in playing God of War Ragnarok is like, I think the combat in that's serviceable. I think it's fine. But what I think it does a really good job with is that it has a really good weight to it. When you hit someone in that game, like with any of your like special moves or like a finisher or something like that, like one of the pre-animated takedowns, like there's a real sense of weight to it because the audio design is so good. And the animations are just so solid. Whereas in this game, it's just like, it feels a little light. And it doesn't feel like you're like when you're connecting with an enemy, it doesn't feel like you're hitting them really that hard, which would make sense, which is why they're taking 10 hits to go down. But like it just is really, really clunky and not in a way that I think feels good.
Yeah.
Or like it feels intentional, let's say. You know, because if you want to make the melee combat feel like imprecise and, you know, realistic in that way, I think that could be kind of a cool idea. But it doesn't feel that way at all. It just feels like not super well executed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Is there anything good about it?
I think the atmosphere is pretty good. It's one of those things where like it's aping a lot of that Dead Space sort of atmosphere, but I really like that atmosphere. So I'm not, upset about it. It looks really nice. And I don't think it's bad necessarily. It's just one of those games that like is a little frustrating for what it could have been so far in my time with it. Like I don't think that I think that the reviews that I've read for this have been pretty spot on. Like the Jim Stephanie Sterling one, like that you read at the very end there, that 30. Like I think that they're right in that.
Okay.
I also think the IGN one is super right. Like it is just like it's a frustrating game more than anything, in not only because the checkpoint system is also fucking terrible. It'll set you back like 4 or 5 minutes sometimes.
No.
And also like some of the fights, like you'll win the fight and you'll go like, well, what did I do there that was different than the 4 other times I've tried that fight? Like nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was just sort of a luck of the draw. And it it is frustrating in that way. Also because like you move really slow because it is taking like a page out of the like, you know, realism book where you're not just this guy who's just running around for, you know, 5 hours at a time. You know, he's walking.
Yeah.
And so he's walking through this space station at the speed that you or I would walk through a space station, which is kind of cool, but it does mean that like getting places takes a minute.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I tweeted this too earlier that so in Dead Space, as you remember, written on the wall, it says, you know, cut off their limbs. Written in blood, like right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a good, like, that's so haunting, right?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, because there's so many questions that you ask, like, why?
Yeah.
Like, their limbs, you know? Like, it is such a haunting, spooky thing to write on the wall. And especially, like, you know, you imagine that was the last thing that this person did. They wrote, cut off their limbs to whoever comes behind them. You know, like, this is what we figured out you need to do to kill these things.
And, like, that's those are their last words.
Yeah, that's scary as fuck. That's haunting, right? Like, I think that's really cool. But in Callisto Protocol, written on blood on the wall, like 4 hours into the game, is shoot the tentacles. And there's nothing scary, but like it's not haunting. It's not like unsettling. It's like, well, yeah, if I was looking at a guy and then some tentacles started spouting out of his chest, I probably would aim there. Like,
so for what I'm getting, the like graphical atmosphere feels good. But the like actual story context part of the atmosphere doesn't have that same kind of.
It's just like, what if Dead Space was in a prison? Which is a cool concept, but then there is also like, well, also what if we took away like most of the cool stuff about Dead Space?
Yeah,
like, what if we took away like the unique, like, cut off their limbs, and what if we also like? It also feels a little bit like a Dead Space best hits sort of collection, like you're going through like a space hospital and you're going through the space laundry and stuff like that. And, you know, these are just like mundane places that would be on a space station. And so it's not unique to Dead Space, let's say. But I think it's just one of those things where, like, as a direct comparison, it does not do this game any favors. What I can say, though, is that there's some ideas in it at the very least. Even if they don't, like, the game takes some big swings with that combat stuff, right? But, like, at the very, like, it's still trying something new, which I think you can commend it for.
Yeah. Right?
Like, not super successful, unfortunately, but like, hey, at least you're trying something, which I think I can get behind. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the thing for me, this game was interesting to me, but like, seeing the reviews, seeing the general stuff, it hits that point where I hate to be this guy, but like, I don't know if this is like a $70 game for me.
I think that here's how I would recommend this game. If you are a Dead Space fan and we're looking forward to this, give it a shot, knowing that it might not be exactly what you were expecting it to be. If you're not a Dead Space fan and are seeing reviews of this and you know, you heard what I've just said and you're feeling a little bit like on the edge about it, I would say wait. I would say I would say don't go in on this right now.
Right.
It is not a thing you need to play right now. Like, for example, like, preemptively, this is just how I was feeling about it. Like, I was fucking so excited for this game. I was like, this might be in like my top 5 of the year. And like, you know, 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, you know, no, it won't be, you know?
Yeah.
I don't love it, but I'm still going back to it. I mean, I purchased it, so, you know, but like, it's not something that I feel like I am dreading returning to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Well,
yeah, it's just disappointing. Also, its performance is bad.
Oh no,
it doesn't run very well.
I heard part of the issue, the Steam copies were like very bad with frame rate. Right? Is that what you've been playing?
The PC? No, I'm playing on PS5.
Okay.
The PC stuff is like the clips I've seen. It's like pretty inexcusable. I mean, like, the frame rate for people I've seen has just like dipped into nothing. You know, there's a lot of stuttering when you transition from areas. On the PS5, like, you'll just get frame dips pretty frequently. There is a performance mode and a visual fidelity mode. You have to change that in the main menu. Go ahead and switch that performance mode on. There's no reason to be playing this game at 25 frames per second. Like, it does not.
So,
and for a game that already feels a little like imprecise with its combat and stuff like that, like you don't want to be doing that.
so what you're saying is the Switch port is not the one to play.
No, that's gonna be a fucking slideshow, dog. They're gonna just have to convert that into a visual novel.
All right.
Yeah. So there you go, Callisto Protocol. I'll be talking about it more next week. I'll probably have it finished by then. I don't think it's a very long game, but so there you go.
Oh, well, guess that's a game I could put in my backlog, if ever.
Yeah, but that's the thing too. Like, this is, to be honest with you, like one of the reasons why I tend to stick with like physical media, because like my brother, big huge Dead Space fan, introduced me to the series. Looking forward to this. I was texting him about it. He was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait." And I was like, "Cool. At Christmas, when you come, when I see you, I'll just give you the copy, like the disc, and then you have to buy it. Like, as long as you're cool, just waiting."
Yeah,
So.
I mean, but I'm more thinking of like the time too. I think I would almost.
Oh,
it
yeah,
seems
yeah.
like knowing how much of a big fan you are of Dead Space 2, it seems like it's so far worthy of my time to play Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2 over this.
I would say if you after last week and the week before were like, damn, like Dead Space looks cool as hell, but this Callisto Protocol thing just doesn't cut it for me. Play those two games. I think they hold up pretty well. I mean, I'm obviously like in the court for Dead Space 2 over 1. If you're gonna have to like pick one of those two to play, but like I think they hold up really well. It's tough for me to say because I'm such a big fan, but there you go.